Imagine the first light of dawn spilling over the Sierra Nevada like liquid gold. A soft mist rises from the Merced River, curling through the valley floor as if the earth itself is breathing. Towering above, sheer granite walls, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 feet high, stand in silent vigil, their faces etched by ice and time. Yosemite Falls thunders in the distance, a silver ribbon unraveling 2,400 feet to the rocks below, its roar a low, eternal hymn. This is not merely a place. It is a verse written by glaciers, sung by wind, and guarded by ancient stone. For millions of visitors each year, and for the native peoples who have called it home for millennia, Yosemite National Park is more than scenery. It is revelation. Half Dome watches like a sentinel from another world. El Capitan looms as an unbreakable promise. Meadows burst with wildflowers that have bloomed the same way for 10,000 years. In this vast cathedral of rock and forest, nearly 1,200 square miles of protected wilderness, the human heart slows. The noise of the modern world fades. Here, nature speaks in a voice older than language itself. This documentary-style journey will take you through the park's dramatic birth in fire and ice, its living climate and layered ecosystems, the astonishing web of life that calls it home, the deep spiritual roots of its first stewards, the bold explorers and climbers who fell under its spell, and the urgent challenges that now test its future. Through it all runs a single thread. Yosemite is not just a park. It is a mirror. It reflects what we choose to honor and what we risk losing. Let us step inside its granite walls and listen. Yosemite National Park covers 1,187 square miles, approximately 3,074 square kilometers, across 4 California counties, primarily Tuolumne and Mariposa, with extensions into Mono and Madera. Centered near 37 degrees 51 minutes north, 119 degrees 31 minutes west, it forms a rugged slice of the central Sierra Nevada, stretching from oak-dotted foothills in the west to the jagged alpine crest along the eastern boundary. Elevation ranges dramatically from about 2,127 feet near the western entrances to 13,114 feet at Mount Lyell, the park's highest peak. This vertical relief creates a compressed world of astonishing diversity within a single day's travel. At the park's scenic heart lies Yosemite Valley, a gentle 7-mile-long, roughly 1-mile-wide U-shaped canyon carved deep into the granite. The valley floor rests around 4,000 feet elevation, framed by vertical cliffs that soar 2,000 to 4,800 feet above the meadows and the winding Merced River. Half Dome commands the eastern end, its iconic northwest face rising nearly 5,000 feet above the valley floor to a summit elevation of 8,846 feet. This massive exfoliation dome, composed of quartz monzonite, reveals concentric sheets of rock that peeled away under the pressure of unloading as overlying material eroded. Nearby stands El Capitan, a sheer granite monolith rising approximately 3,000 feet from the valley floor to a total elevation of 7,573 feet, one of the largest exposed granite faces on Earth. The geological story of Yosemite unfolds over immense timescales. Roughly 100 to 80 million years ago, during the Cretaceous period, massive intrusions of magma cooled slowly several miles underground, forming the Sierra Nevada batholith, a vast composite body of granitic rock. About 10 million years ago, tectonic forces uplifted and westward tilted the entire range, steepening river gradients and initiating deep, V-shaped river canyons. Then, beginning around 2 to 3 million years ago, with the onset of the Pleistocene ice ages, glaciers became the master sculptors. More than 40 glacial interglacial cycles reshaped the landscape. The largest glaciers, including the ancient Merced Glacier, flowed down from the High Sierra, scouring and widening the pre-existing river valleys into the classic U-shaped profiles we see today. Multiple advances, the Sherwin, Tahoe, Tenaya, and the most recent Tioga glaciation, ending roughly 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, polished the granite to a glassy sheen, plucked enormous boulders, deposited lateral and terminal moraines, and left behind hanging valleys from which spectacular waterfalls now plunge. Exfoliation joints, formed by the release of pressure as the rock was uncovered, combined with frost wedging and other erosional forces to create the sheer, clean faces prized by climbers and photographers alike. Today, the park contains over 3,200 lakes and ponds, many of them glacial tarns, and approximately 1,700 miles of streams. Two major wild and scenic rivers, the Merced and the Tuolumne, drain the landscape, their headwaters high in the alpine zone feeding distant Central Valley agriculture far below. Exposed rock is overwhelmingly granite, about 95%, with small remnants of older metamorphic rocks. Features such as polished domes, erratic boulders, and joint-controlled cliffs continue to evolve slowly through ongoing weathering and occasional rockfalls. From Glacier Point at sunset, the entire valley spreads out like a living topographic map of deep time. The Merced River snaking through meadows, the great granite walls glowing rose gold, and the distant high country where small remnant glaciers, Lyell and McClure, still cling beneath Mount Lyell, providing cold meltwater to alpine streams even in late summer. Yosemite's geography is not static scenery, but a dynamic record of fire, uplift, ice, and relentless erosion, a testament to the immense forces that have shaped our planet over hundreds of millions of years. Yosemite's climate is fundamentally Mediterranean, characterized by mild, wet winters and hot, dry summers, but extreme elevation gradients transform it into a vertical mosaic of microclimates. Annual precipitation averages around 36 to 37 inches in Yosemite Valley, around 4,000 feet, rising to about 50 inches at higher elevations, such as 8,600 feet near Tuolumne Meadows. Over 95% of this moisture falls between October and May, with more than 75% arriving as rain or snow from November through March. Summers are remarkably arid, receiving less than 3% of the yearly total. Snowpack in the high country can exceed 50 inches of water equivalent at peak, while the valley sees far less accumulation and more rain. Temperatures vary sharply with altitude. In Yosemite Valley, summer daytime highs frequently reach the upper 80s or low 90s degrees Fahrenheit, with occasional spikes above 100 degrees Fahrenheit and nights cooling into the 50s. At Tuolumne Meadows, 8,600 feet, July daytime highs rarely exceed 70 to 72 degrees Fahrenheit, and nighttime lows often dip below freezing even in midsummer. Record extremes illustrate the range. 112 degrees Fahrenheit in the valley, 1915, versus -7 degrees Fahrenheit at higher stations, 2009. Strong, hot, dry mono winds occasionally gust through in spring and fall, desiccating vegetation and raising fire danger. Summer thunderstorms are common in the high country, their lightning strikes igniting the fires that have long shaped the Sierra ecosystem. These climatic patterns, layered atop the park's 11,000-foot elevation span, produce 5 distinct life zones stacked like ecological staircases. At the lowest elevations, below roughly 4,000 feet, chaparral and blue oak woodlands dominate the drier western slopes. Between 4,000 and 6,000 feet lies the lower montane forest, featuring ponderosa pine, incense cedar, and black oak. The upper montane zone, 6,000 to 8,000 feet, supports white fir, sugar pine, and the park's famous giant sequoia groves. Above that, the subalpine zone, 8,000 to 10,000 plus feet, is characterized by lodgepole pine, mountain hemlock, and whitebark pine. Finally, the alpine tundra above treeline, roughly 10,500 to 11,000 feet, is a harsh realm of cushion plants, hardy wildflowers, lichens, and exposed rock where growing seasons are measured in weeks. Meadows and riparian corridors weave through all zones, acting as biodiversity hotspots. Yosemite hosts more than 3,200 lakes and ponds, many reflecting surrounding peaks like mirrors, alongside 1,700 miles of streams. Wetlands and riverbanks provide critical corridors for wildlife movement and plant dispersal. The park's old-growth forests, protected across nearly 95% designated wilderness, support an extraordinary array of species, representing over 20% of California's native plants. Seasonal rhythms define the experience. Winter blankets the high country in deep, silent snow, transforming trails into cross-country routes. Spring brings roaring waterfalls fed by melting snowpack and explosive wildflower displays in the meadows. Long, golden summer days carry the scent of warm pine resin and the buzz of afternoon thunderstorms. Autumn paints black oaks in brilliant crimson and gold against evergreen backdrops. Each season reveals a different facet of the same resilient, interconnected system. Yet the climate is changing. Average temperatures have already risen noticeably over the past century, with minimum nighttime temperatures increasing even faster. Projections suggest warming of 6.7 to 10.3 degrees Fahrenheit by 2100 under high-emission scenarios, bringing more extreme heat days, earlier snowmelt, reduced snowpack, and longer, more intense fire seasons. These shifts are already stressing high-elevation ecosystems and altering the timing of life cycles across the park's vertical zones. Yosemite's climate and ecosystems form a living laboratory of adaptation and beauty, an intricate symphony of weather, rock, water, and life that has endured for millennia and now faces new pressures in the Anthropocene. Its layered zones remind us how tightly intertwined climate and biodiversity truly are. As the morning sun filters through the canopy of giant sequoias in Mariposa Grove, shafts of light illuminate bark that has stood for more than 2,000 years. Yosemite's flora and fauna weave an intricate living tapestry across its elevation zones, supporting extraordinary biodiversity within a single protected landscape. The park is home to more than 1,400 species of flowering plants, ferns, mosses, and lichens, representing over 20% of California's native plant species. Its forests, meadows, and alpine slopes host more than 400 species of vertebrates, including roughly 262 bird species, dozens of mammals, reptiles, amphibians, and fish. The most iconic trees are the giant sequoias, Sequoiadendron giganteum. Yosemite protects 3 groves: the Mariposa Grove near the south entrance, now home to over 500 mature trees following restoration efforts, the smaller Tuolumne Grove with about 2 dozen, and the Merced Grove, also with roughly 2 dozen. These ancient monarchs can reach heights of nearly 300 feet, with trunks more than 30 feet in diameter. Their fibrous, cinnamon-colored bark resists fire, and their cones, only the size of a chicken egg, require the heat of wildfire or prescribed burns to open and release seeds onto mineral-rich soil. For centuries, native peoples used low-intensity fires to maintain open groves and promote regeneration. After decades of fire suppression, modern restoration, including the major Mariposa Grove project completed in 2018, has removed pavement, restored natural hydrology, and reintroduced beneficial fire. Conifer forests dominate much of the park. In the lower montane zone, ponderosa pines with their puzzle-like bark stand alongside incense cedars and black oaks, whose acorns were once a dietary staple. Higher up, sugar pines produce the longest cones of any pine, sometimes exceeding 20 inches, while white firs and Douglas firs create dense canopies. In the subalpine zone, lodgepole pines form open stands, their straight trunks once used by native people for poles, and whitebark pines provide critical food for Clark's nutcrackers and grizzly bears in other ranges. Above treeline, hardy cushion plants, alpine sedges, and colorful wildflowers such as Sierra gentian and sky pilot cling to rocky slopes where the growing season lasts only weeks. Meadows burst into life each spring, Yosemite's wetlands and riparian areas support shooting stars, lupines, elephant heads, and California poppies. These open spaces act as biodiversity hotspots, drawing wildlife and offering hikers serene views framed by granite walls. The animal kingdom is equally vibrant. American black bears, Ursus americanus, are the most famous residents. Intelligent, opportunistic, and now managed through strict food storage rules and education. Human bear incidents have plummeted thanks to bear-proof lockers and visitor awareness. Mule deer graze peacefully in valley meadows, their large ears alert for the slightest sound. Coyotes, bobcats, and the secretive mountain lion patrol the forests and ridges. Smaller mammals include golden-mantled ground squirrels, yellow-bellied marmots sunning on boulders, and pikas, those tiny haymakers of the alpine zone that stockpile vegetation for winter. Bird life adds constant motion and song. Steller's jays flash brilliant blue as they scold hikers, while acorn woodpeckers store thousands of acorns in granary trees. Great gray owls hunt at dusk in meadows, and peregrine falcons nest on sheer cliffs, their recovery a conservation success story. Over 250 bird species have been recorded, from tiny mountain chickadees to majestic bald eagles near rivers and lakes. Reptiles and amphibians thrive in moist habitats. The Yosemite toad, once common, is now carefully monitored due to population declines. Rubber boas, gentle constrictors that curl into a ball when threatened, hide under logs, while western fence lizards dart across sun-warmed rocks. Fish such as rainbow trout and native California roach inhabit the clear streams, though many high-country lakes were historically stocked and now receive protection to preserve native ecosystems. Every species plays a vital role. Bears disperse seeds in their scat. Woodpeckers excavate cavities later used by owls and bats. Fire-adapted plants regenerate after burns that also clear meadows for deer and wildflowers. This interconnected web has evolved over millennia, sustained by the park's varied climates and protected wilderness. In Yosemite, flora and fauna do not merely exist. They tell an ongoing story of resilience, adaptation, and quiet interdependence amid towering granite and flowing water. Long before European eyes beheld its granite walls, Yosemite Valley was known as Ahwahneechee, the gaping mouth-like place, to the Ahwahneechee people. Archaeological evidence shows human presence in the Yosemite region for at least 8,000 years, with the southern Sierra Miwok and Mono Lake Paiute peoples maintaining deep, continuous ties to the land. 7 tribes are traditionally associated with the park today: the Southern Sierra Miwok Nation, Bishop Paiute Tribe, Bridgeport Indian Colony, Mono Lake Kutsaduka Tribe, North Fork Rancheria of Mono Indians, Picayune Rancheria of the Chukchansi Indians, and Tuolumne Band of Miwok Indians. Their ancestors traveled seasonally from the foothills to high meadows, practicing sophisticated land stewardship that shaped the very landscape we see today. The Ahwahneechee lived in villages along the Merced River, harvesting acorns that they leached and ground into nutritious flour, hunting deer and small game, fishing salmon and trout, and gathering berries, roots, and materials for intricate basketry. They used controlled, low-intensity burns to encourage edible plants, improve hunting grounds, reduce underbrush, and promote the growth of straight young shoots for baskets. This traditional ecological knowledge created open meadows and healthy sequoia groves long before modern science recognized fire's essential role. Legends and oral histories tied the people intimately to the land. Place names carried stories. Tutocanula for El Capitan, said to be scaled by a measuring worm in one tail. Pohono for Brittle Veil Fall, meaning puffing wind as mist swirls in the breeze. Ceremonial roundhouses hosted dances, songs, and gatherings that reinforced community and spiritual connection to the Creator and the natural world. Master weavers like Lucy Tellez in the early 20th century created baskets so finely woven they are now treasured in museums. Chief Tenaya, the last prominent leader of the Ahwahneechee, embodied resistance and resilience during a time of profound upheaval. Born to an Ahwahneechee father and raised among Mono Lake Paiute relatives after disease and conflict, Tenaya led his people through the Mariposa War of 1851. The California Gold Rush brought miners and the Mariposa Battalion, who entered the valley seeking retribution for raids on supplies. Villages were burned, people forcibly removed. Tenaya negotiated, resisted, and ultimately saw his band scattered, some killed, others displaced to reservations or fleeing to allied tribes. He reportedly died in 1853 during a conflict with Mono Paiutes. By the early 20th century, the last full-blooded Ahwahneechee, Totuya Maria Librado, passed away in 1931, yet cultural memory endured. The arrival of Euro-Americans brought both awe and tragedy. While artists and writers celebrated the scenery, native presence was often marginalized or erased from early park narratives. Today, the National Park Service works in partnership with associated tribes to protect sacred sites, repatriate objects, and incorporate traditional knowledge into management. The reconstructed Indian village of Ahwahneechee in Yosemite Valley allows visitors to see cedar bark houses, umacha, learn about plant uses, and hear living cultural demonstrations. For countless visitors from around the world, Yosemite holds a spiritual power that transcends any single tradition. John Muir described it as a temple where cathedrals of stone inspired reverence. Photographers like Ansel Adams captured light that felt divine. Hikers on the Mist Trail or at Olmsted Point often speak of feeling humbled yet profoundly connected, small in the presence of ancient granite, yet part of something eternal. In a fast-paced, digital world, the park invites silence, reflection, and renewal. Its meadows, waterfalls, and quiet forests remind us of our place within the larger web of life. Yosemite's cultural and spiritual significance lies in this layered heritage, millennia of indigenous stewardship, stories etched into the land, and the universal human response to overwhelming natural beauty. It is a place where the past whispers through the pines and the present finds space to breathe and remember what truly matters. The written chapter of Yosemite's story opened dramatically in 1851 when the Mariposa Battalion, militia pursuing Ahwahneechee raiders, entered the valley and stood awestruck by its cliffs and waterfalls. Lafayette Bonnell later described the moment as one of speechless wonder. News spread quickly, drawing artists, writers, and curious travelers. In 1855, James Mason Hutchings published early tourist accounts, and artist Thomas Ayres created dramatic sketches that captivated Eastern audiences. Galen Clark, often called the guardian of the Mariposa Grove, discovered the giant sequoias in 1857 and devoted his life to their protection. A pivotal moment came on June 30th, 1864, when President Abraham Lincoln signed the Yosemite Grant, setting aside Yosemite Valley and the Mariposa Grove as a state park, the first time any government had preserved land solely for its scenic and inspirational value. This precedent helped inspire the national park movement worldwide. John Muir arrived in 1868, worked as a shepherd and sawyer, then began his lifelong advocacy. His eloquent writings portrayed Yosemite as a divine cathedral threatened by overgrazing and commercial interests. In 1890, Congress established Yosemite National Park, largely due to Muir's efforts and the newly formed Sierra Club, 1892. The U.S. Army protected the park until the National Park Service assumed management in 1916. Early tourism evolved from rugged stagecoach journeys to more comfortable lodges. The Wawona Hotel opened in 1879, and the famous Wawona Tunnel Tree, a sequoia with a carriage road cut through it in 1881, became a sensation until it fell in a storm in 1969. Curry Village tents appeared in 1899, offering affordable access to the valley floor. Yet the true spirit of adventure revealed itself on the granite walls. Mountaineering in Yosemite has pushed human limits and redefined the sport. In 1869, John Muir made the first recorded ascent of Cathedral Peak in Tuolumne Meadows, solo and without ropes, describing it as a temple displaying nature's best masonry. In 1875, George Anderson drilled holes, inserted eye bolts, and fixed ropes to complete the first ascent of Half Dome. Weeks later, Sally Dutcher became the first documented woman to reach its summit. The modern big wall era dawned in the 1950s. In 1957, a team led by Royal Robbins made the first ascent of Half Dome's northwest face. The following year, Warren Harding, Wayne Merry, and George Whitmore spent 47 days over 18 months to pioneer the nose on El Capitan, the 3,000-foot sheer face that had long seemed impossible. Their route, using hundreds of bolts and aid climbing, opened the door to Yosemite's vertical frontier. Camp 4, the dusty, boulder-strewn campground in the valley, became the epicenter of the climbing counterculture in the 1960s and 1970s. Visionaries like Royal Robbins, Yvon Chouinard, Tom Frost, and later Jim Bridwell, John Long, and Billy Westbay developed clean climbing ethics, emphasizing removable protection over permanent bolts. In 1975, Bridwell, Long, and Westbay achieved the first one-day ascent of the nose in just under 18 hours, a feat that seemed superhuman at the time. Standards continued to rise. Free climbing, using ropes only for protection, not aid, saw breakthroughs such as the 1990s ascents on El Capitan. In 2015, Tommy Caldwell and Kevin Jorgensen completed the first free ascent of the Dawn Wall after years of effort, a story of perseverance broadcast worldwide. In 2017, Alex Honnold's free solo of El Capitan, captured in the Oscar-winning film Free Solo, pushed the boundaries of what many thought possible, climbing 3,000 feet without a rope in under 4 hours. Today, thousands of climbers from every corner of the globe test themselves on El Capitan's dozens of routes, Half Dome's cables, a moderated via ferrata-style experience, and countless domes and spires. Yet every ascent still demands respect for the stone, partnership, and the unpredictable Sierra weather. Yosemite's walls have taught humility, innovation, and the joy of moving lightly through wild places. From Muir's solitary scrambles to today's speed records and free solos, Yosemite's climbing history mirrors humanity's evolving relationship with wild nature, part challenge, part communion, and always a dialogue with ancient granite. In the long shadow of Half Dome at twilight, the granite walls appear timeless, yet Yosemite faces profound and accelerating pressures that test its resilience. Climate change stands as the most pervasive threat. Over the past century, average temperatures in the Sierra Nevada have risen noticeably, with minimum nighttime temperatures climbing even faster. Projections for the coming decades forecast warming of 6.7 to 10.3 degrees Fahrenheit by 2100 under high-emission scenarios. This shift brings more extreme heat days, earlier spring snowmelt, reduced snowpack, and prolonged dry periods that stress high-elevation forests and alter the timing of life cycles across every elevation zone. Snowpack decline directly affects the Merced and Tuolumne rivers, whose headwaters feed not only park ecosystems, but also millions of acres of Central Valley agriculture and urban water supplies. Earlier runoff means drier late summer streams, warmer water temperatures harmful to native fish, and increased wildfire risk. Small remnant glaciers, such as Lyell and McClure beneath Mount Lyell, continue to shrink. Some models suggest many high country glaciers could disappear within decades. These icy reservoirs once provided steady, cold meltwater late into summer. Wildfires, long a natural and beneficial force, have grown more intense and destructive after a century of aggressive suppression that allowed unnatural fuel buildup. The 2018 Ferguson fire burned more than 96,000 acres, closed the park for weeks, and filled the valley with thick smoke. Other recent fires have scarred sequoia groves and threatened infrastructure. Scientists warn that fire frequency and severity could increase dramatically as temperatures rise and summers lengthen. Yet fire is also part of the solution. Carefully managed prescribed burns and cultural burning practices, revived in partnership with traditionally associated tribes, help restore forest health, reduce catastrophic risk, and promote giant sequoia regeneration. Tourism itself presents a double-edged sword. Visitation has soared, with peak years exceeding 5 million people. This brings economic benefits and public support for protection, but it also creates summer traffic congestion in the narrow valley, air pollution from idling vehicles, trampling of fragile meadows, and human-wildlife conflicts. Invasive species, such as yellow star thistle and Himalayan blackberry, spread along roads and trails, outcompeting native plants. Air quality, affected by distant urban pollution and wildfire smoke, damages the needles of giant sequoias and other sensitive species. Amphibian populations, including the Yosemite toad, have declined due to habitat changes, disease, and introduced predators. Despite these challenges, Yosemite's conservation story is one of innovation, partnership, and hope. The National Park Service, in collaboration with the Yosemite Conservancy, the Sierra Club, and 7 traditionally associated tribes, pursues large-scale restoration. The Ackerson Meadow Project, one of the largest meadow restorations ever undertaken in a national park, has filled historic erosion gullies, reconnected wetlands, and planted hundreds of thousands of native plants. Bear management programs using food storage lockers and visitor education have reduced human bear incidents by more than 99% since the problematic garbage dump era of the mid-20th century. Peregrine falcons, once nearly wiped out by DDT, have rebounded strongly. Endangered amphibians are being carefully monitored and, where possible, reintroduced. Wilderness protection remains central. Nearly 95% of the park is designated wilderness, preserving vast, roadless areas where natural processes dominate. The 1964 Wilderness Act and subsequent management plans ensure that future generations can experience solitude and wildness. Ongoing scientific research, ranging from long-term climate monitoring to studies of sequoia resilience, guides adaptive management. Partnerships with indigenous nations integrate traditional ecological knowledge, especially around fire, into modern stewardship. The greatest conservation tool may be education. Millions of visitors each year leave Yosemite inspired to protect wild places. Through ranger programs, interpretive exhibits, and citizen science opportunities, the park fosters a deeper understanding that humans are not separate from nature, but part of its intricate web. Yosemite's future depends on balancing access with protection, embracing science and indigenous wisdom, and addressing the global drivers of climate change. The granite will endure, but the living ecosystems that make this place extraordinary require our active care. Conservation here is not merely about saving scenery, it is about safeguarding a cathedral of life for all time. As the final rays of sunlight slip behind the western rim of Yosemite Valley, the great granite walls glow briefly in shades of rose and amber before fading into deep twilight. The roar of Yosemite Falls softens to a distant whisper. A gentle breeze carries the scent of pine and damp earth. In this quiet moment, the park feels both ancient and alive, its story written in stone, water, and the quiet persistence of life. From the slow grind of Pleistocene glaciers that carved its iconic U-shaped valley to the delicate balance of its layered ecosystems, from the ancient stewardship of the Ahwahneechee people to the daring ascents of modern climbers, Yosemite reveals layer after layer of wonder. It has inspired presidents and poets, scientists and seekers. It has humbled the strongest and healed the weary. In its meadows and on its cliffs, we remember that we are temporary visitors in a landscape measured in millennia. Yet this place of timeless beauty now stands at a crossroads shaped by our own actions. Climate shifts, changing fire regimes, and the pressures of millions of human feet remind us that even the mightiest granite cathedrals are connected to the fragile web of life. The choices we make, how we visit, how we advocate, how we confront global environmental challenges, will echo far beyond our lifetimes. Yosemite teaches humility and hope in equal measure. Its sequoias have survived centuries of fire and drought. Its rivers continue to carve new paths through stone. Its wildlife adapts with quiet resilience. If we listen carefully to its lessons, respect for natural rhythms, the power of thoughtful stewardship, and the deep spiritual renewal found in wild places, we can help ensure that future generations will stand beneath Half Dome and feel the same sense of awe that has moved souls for thousands of years. The mountains are calling. In their granite voices and misty veils, they ask us to walk lightly, to protect fiercely, and to remember that we are part of something vastly larger and more enduring than ourselves. May we answer with wisdom, reverence, and love, so that the verse of Yosemite continues to echo through eternity.